The villagers ran helter-skelter after witnessing what had just happened to Ella. Bisola personally was shocked and did not believe what had just happened to her friend. It didn't take long. Some villagers gathered around to tell the king what had transpired. Meanwhile, when Bisola got home, she was still in shock. Her stepmother, Tosin, then spoke to her. "I have always told you that there was something about your friend. I didn't even know that she was a witch," Tosin said. "My friend is not a witch, I have known her my whole life," Bisola said. She was almost about to cry. She ran out of the hut and sat outside crying. In the meantime, Tosin came outside and told Bisola that she wanted to buy some ingredients in the market to cook her favorite meal. Bisola was unhappy something unpleasant had just happened to her friend, but all her stepmother could talk about was food. It didn't take long. John came to meet Bisola at home. She met Bisola crying outside her hut. John explained to Bisola that she needed to stop crying and they need to work to help Ella. "I just can't imagine why something like that would happen to her," Bisola said. John replied, telling Bisola that there were many people who did not like Ella in the village and that someone must have bewitched Ella. John then told Bisola something that shocked her the more. He told her that while he was out getting herbs for his grandfather some days back in the evening, he saw a figure passing through the forest going to the path of Modera, the evil priest. He told Bisola that whatever charm was used on Ella, he was certain it was from Modera. "So what do we do now?" Bisola asked. "What of Ella's grandmother? She could die of shock if she hears the news," Bisola said, almost to burst into tears. "Don't worry, I have a plan," John replied. John explained to Bisola that he can make a concoction that could make Ella's grandmother asleep for 3 days. He explained that during that time they must find a way to help Ella and restore her back to her human form. "We cannot trust anyone," John said. "We have to do this by ourselves," John said. In the meantime, John went home and prepared the concoction for Ella's grandmother. Later, he took the concoction there. He then told Ella's grandmother that Ella was on her way but had sent him and Bisola to bring the herbal drink for her. Ella's grandmother, who was unaware of the calamity that had befallen her granddaughter, drank the drink, and after a minute, she fell asleep like a baby. Later, John then told Bisola the second part of his plan. He told Bisola that they needed to go into the forest and meet Modera, the evil priest. He explained that Bisola would pretend that she came to ask for a solution to a problem. She would say she wanted to turn someone into an animal and see what Modera would tell her to do. "You know I would do anything just to help Ella. But what if the priest sees through me and detects that I'm lying? What will we do then?" Bisola asked. "Don't worry about that, my grandfather will help us," John replied. "There's one more problem," Bisola said. She then told him that she doesn't trust her stepmother and that she would need a lie to get her out of the house. John then told Bisola to tell her stepmother Tosin that she wanted to go look after Ella's grandmother for the night. "You are right. That is the perfect excuse," Bisola said. "Thank you, John." I wouldn't have been able to help Ella all by myself, she added. We're in this together. I love you both and I know either of you would do the same for me. John replied. That evening, when Bisola's stepmom returned home, Bisola followed John's plan and told her that she wanted to go look after Ella's grandmother. Tosin knew that helping Ella's grandmother would not change Ella's fate, so she allowed her to go. As soon as Tosin left the house, Bisola went to John's house. John's grandfather then spoke to Bisola. He gave her a medicine to chew before leaving. He told her that murderer will not be able to detect the truth from lies once they spoke. Bisola thanked John's grandfather. Later at night, she and John went into the forest to meet murderer. When Bisola got to the place, she was scared at first but then summoned courage. Once she was inside the hut, Bisola spoke to murderer asking him for the charm to make someone to turn into an animal. Murderer brought her the same charm he had given to her stepmother. Murderer explained to Bisola that once she places it on her target, she needs to speak the name of the animal. Her target will then turn into the animal. Bisola then asked if it was possible to reverse the effect. Murderer told Bisola that if she posed the power back on the animal, the person would change back. He however told her that if she needed to change the person she used the powder on, she must do it in 3 days unless the effect would be permanent. Bisola thanked Murderer, the evil priest, and dropped the items as her form of payment. After Bisola left the shrine, she met John in the middle of the forest. She explained to John everything that Murderer, the evil priest, told her. John then took the powder from Bisola. Together both of them journeyed back into the village. Bisola then went to Ella's grandmother's hut while John returned home. The next morning, Bisola woke up and went home. Getting home, she realized that her stepmother Tosin was not home. Something then began to trouble her. She knew that her stepmother didn't like Ella. However, she wasn't sure if her stepmother had the mind to go so far as changing her best friend into an animal. There was only one way to find out. Bisola began to scatter the house in search. She wanted to be sure if her stepmother was the one who had done something to Ella or if she was guilty-free. After a long while of searching, Bisola discovered where her stepmother, Tosin, had hidden the powder. As she saw this, she quickly ran to meet John and explain what she had seen. John was actually surprised at what he had heard. He said he would not have guessed that Bisola's stepmother was the one behind Ella's demise. This changed everything, John said to Bisola. Now that we know this, we must act a bit faster. As Bisola and John were still having their conversation, Bisola noticed a group of villagers patrolling the village. John then told Bisola that the king had ordered a search party to see if they could look for Ella. He explained that the king did not believe that Ella was a witch and wanted to help her, but they needed to find her first. Bisola then told John that Ella, as a snake, would not be hiding inside the village. There is a spot Ella always goes to cry in the forest. I'm thinking she may be hiding there. John decided to see if Bisola's assumption would be true. They both then went into the forest. Getting to the spot, John and Bisola began looking at the ground to see if they would see Ella. John warned Bisola to be careful for other snakes on the ground. After a while of searching, Bisola noticed the tail of a snake that was hiding under a rock. She called the attention of John, who quickly walked towards where Bisola stood. John decided to see if Bisola's thoughts were true. He took from the powder that Madara gave Bisola and poured it on the snake. Behold! Like a shock, the snake transformed and revealed Ella. Bisola cried tears of joy as she hugged Ella. John also joined in the hug. "I'm so thankful that we found you. We thought we would not be able to see you again." Bisola cried tears of joy. Bisola then explained to Ella what had transpired and how she and John had gone through a lot to help her. John then told Ella and Bisola that Ella would need to hide until nighttime before going home because of the villagers in the village. He told them that once they had told the king what had happened in the morning, they would be able to settle everything. At night, Ella hid herself as she entered into her hut. However, Bisola's stepmother saw her entering the hut. She recognized that it was Ella because Ella was putting on the same clothes that she had on during the competition. Tosin was very confused. She could not sleep properly at night. She began to wonder if the power that the priest gave her was ineffective. There was only one way to find out. In the morning, Tosin stepped out of the house to go meet the priest. In the meantime, Bisola sensed that something wasn't right because Tosin usually does not wake up very early to go to the market or go anywhere in particular. Bisola then knew that she needed to act fast. She rushed to tell John that she was sure her stepmother must have known that Ella was somehow fine and she was back in the village. John and Bisola then went to meet the king to tell the king everything. At first, the king found it hard to believe them. However, the king decided to send his most trusted bodyguard, Monsor, to see if they have restored her back to her human form. The guard, after following Bisola and John, confirmed that truly, Ella was restored and fine. The king then decided to listen properly to John and Bisola. John explained that Tosin was headed to meet the priest who helped her to turn Ella into a snake. He, however, explained that he knew a shortcut. The king, however, told them that going was not necessary. He opened up that he had a secret pool where he could watch someone providing he had something that belonged to the person. The king told Bisola to go bring something that belonged to her stepmother. He, however, warned her that if her stepmother was innocent and was found doing nothing evil, she and John would be locked up in the palace prison. Bisola did as the king commanded and went to bring something that belonged to her stepmother. The king then called his palace priest. The palace priest then dipped the item that Bisola brought into the special pool. After they did this, they then saw Bisola and the Madura, the evil priest. The king and a few others who had gathered were able to hear the conversation that Tosin was having with the evil priest, Madura. This time, Tosin asked Madura to give her a powder that would make Ella to run mad. She said she did not want Ella to escape from this predicament. The king and his subjects watched this, and that was how the king realized that John and Bisola was telling the truth. Later, as Tosin was returning back to the village, the king palace guards apprehended her and told her to come to the palace. Before now, the king had already sent a message to the villagers to come to the palace to witness judgment. The king asked Tosin if she was responsible for what happened to Ella. Tosin lied, saying she was not the one. However, Tosin was with the powder that Madure gave her. When questioned about the powder, Tosin lied that the powder had no effect and that it was completely harmless. The king then told Tosin to pour it on herself. However, Tosin was reluctant to do so. The king then told her that everyone was already aware of what she did. He then told her that she will be imprisoned all the days of her life for the evil she committed to Ella. And that was how Bisola was punished. Everyone in the village watched as this happened. The next day, Ella's grandmother woke up and Ella hugged her tightly in her arms. She told her grandmother everything and how her friends helped and rescued her. The king also decided to reward John and Bisola for their bravery and courage. Also for the bond of friendship they shared with Ella that made them to risk their lives to save her. The king rewarded each of them with gold. The gold was more than what each of them could spend in their lifetime. The villagers learned a huge lesson from Ella's story. They also remembered from time to time that Tosin was now locked in prison, never to come out again. And so, Ella, Bisola and John continued to their life in the village, living happily one day after another. We have come to the end of this tale. Please like and subscribe till we meet again.